Why can't oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top.
Hello, Sharon and Mark. How are you?
I'm good. How about you, Mark Silverman?
Pretty good. That must mean it's time for Over the Rainbow.
It must be.
Has anyone crossed over the rainbow? Well, we promoted a couple last week.
We actually have a few notable people. Some that you might say, "Oh, I know who that is," and some people maybe not, that maybe deserve to be more noted.
Actually, as I look at this list, I don't think anybody on this list is unknown. I don't see anybody on the list who.
Well, I don't know that Eclipse would be somebody that everybody would know.
Okay, Eclipse would be.
I certainly did not know who Jim Redmond was before I read the article.
But even if you and I didn't know him, I don't think he could be classified as unknown. I bet there are a lot of people who knew.
Right. Including
he was, or at least knew the story.
Right. What about Benjamin Silvetti?
I'd heard of him.
All right. Well, you have to really be like in the political know to really know who he was.
I wouldn't have known exactly who. I would have known he was somebody from politics, 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm.
That I would have known.
Yeah. Like I said, I only recently started paying attention because of our former twice impeached moron that's still trying to deny his loss. But yeah, we have according to him, he didn't. He's still trying to prove otherwise.
Okay, just so long as we're clear.
But big baseball fan. Bruce
How the Yankees
Sutter,
do this year?
Yeah, they didn't end on a good note there.
So can we? Has the 2022 season crossed over the rainbow?
Gone. Yeah, we can pay tribute to their.
If only they had a power hitter, guy who could hit home runs.
Yeah, you know what? I think Judge was just burnt out. I think it was just a lot. And once
he probably needs a change of scenery.
You know what? Once he hit that 66, he did hit another 2 during the postseason, but the Indians figured out how to pitch to him, and then that was, I think, maybe
the Guardians. You mean?
Yeah. Yes. You know what? I even caught John Sterling saying the Indians a couple times.
What a surprise! John Sterling misspeaking. Oh dear God, unheard of. Oh, it's deep. It's long. It's an out. John Sterling, picture of credibility.
He's funny. He's funny. He's getting older. I just read that they re-signed him for another year. I don't think he's going to be making as many. I think he's basically going to be doing home games. He started to have a fill-in for travel games, but I love him. But in any case, we had a reliever who was not a Yankee, but a very good relief pitcher who definitely deserves an honor to enjoy, to honor his passing. Bruce Sutter.
Bruce Sutter was absolutely one of the first relief specialists.
Yeah, I think right. I think he was the beginning of the approach of looking at a bullpen a little differently than it was. I mean, the bullpen usually was felt as a demotion.
Yeah, it was guys who couldn't start. It was guys who failed to start very often.
So in a lot of ways that still happens. Yeah, the best reliever of all was Mariano Rivera, and when you look back at his past, he was a failed starter, but amazing, most famous Hall of Fame reliever. But I don't know that he would have got there if it weren't for Bruce Sutter, who sort of was the beginning of that whole way of looking at relievers.
Well, he was also one of the first, not just reliever, but late inning specialists.
Sutter from the belt to the plate, a swing and a miss, and that's the winner. That's the winner.
You
Right.
know, not quite. He did a lot of 2 inning stints, so it wasn't quite the 1 inning specialist that you tend to see now. Or I say that you tend to see now that followed, because already
Right.
that's changing. Now the philosophy is use your best bullpen guy during the most crucial fire, and that could happen in the
Yes.
6th inning or the 5th inning.
Yes.
So,
It's what Boone was doing. And, and even, Holmes, which was sort of our de facto closer, ended up coming in the 7th inning and was used for 3 innings. And he did very well. It's just, if you don't hit, you can't win. So,
but
yeah.
Suter dominated. I didn't realize how short
Yeah.
his career was.
Yeah, he had 12 seasons. He played between 1976 and 1988. He was signed by the Chicago Cubs. I didn't know he was an undrafted free agent.
Well,
Um,
it was even more interesting than that to me,
yeah,
because he had been drafted by the Senators, decided to go to college, dropped out of college to play semi-pro ball.
right.
And he was an undrafted free agent playing. Now, I wonder, because this was 1970, I think, when he was drafted by the Senators, I think it was. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. That's before free agency. So did
Right.
he just not want to play for the Washington Senators, who were a terrible team for years on their way out? I
It's
mean, I believe they
interesting.
became the Texas Rangers.
True.
And so maybe this was his way of choosing where he went, by
I don't know.
dropping
I
out of
think
school, by
maybe not, but I think it's more like, he wanted to be a regular guy and go to college, and then college wasn't all it was cracked up to be, and he thought, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this, and I should just go play baseball.
I think I'm more likely right. I think he
You
was.
always like to think that you're right.
Well, that's only because I usually am, but that's okay.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
We can agree to agree. Um, but the weird thing is, as I'm going through, and I'm getting to the end of one of the stories, and then it said, and he died. Oh, he died. And I said, oh yeah, I wouldn't really be looking at the story if he hadn't died.
6-time All-Star, 1982 World Series champion, a career ERA of 2.83, 300 saves, the third in MLB history at the time of his retirement. He won the National League Cy Young Award in 1979, won the NL Rolaids Relief Award 4 times. I mean, just stack it
And he
up.
was an MVP candidate a couple times. So
Yeah, which was kind of hard to do as a relief pitcher, because you're not an everyday player.
well,
You know what else?
there are those that argue that pitchers shouldn't be eligible for the MVP because they're
Well, they
not
had their
everyday.
own. Yeah, they
They
had
have
their
the
own
Cy
award.
Young, but
Right.
a relief pitcher is as close to an everyday player as you get as a pitcher.
That's true.
There are guys who can
But
make 80 appearances in a year.
what blew my mind? This is something I did not know. His number was 42.
And that blew your mind
Yeah,
because,
because 40. I mean, the only 42 that
oh,
ever
of
mattered to
course,
me.
yeah,
Right. And
Jackie
Jack
Robinson. That's
Robinson and Mariano. So, and the Cardinals retired his number in 2006, and an introduction into the Cardinals Hall of Fame in 2014. And and yeah, he shares his retired number with Jackie Robinson and Hall of Famer Mariano Rivera. And
of
Jackie
course now
Robinson.
42 is retired across baseball in honor of
Exactly.
Robinson.
So that's what I was about to
Yeah,
say.
okay.
Jackie Robinson, whose number 42 was retired by all major league teams in 1997, except Mariano Rivera, who was sort of grandfathered in.
Right.
But once he retired, that was it. Sutter
So
also served.
So wait a minute. Did the Yankees have Rivera's uniform up as 42 on the retired wall as well?
They sure do.
Okay.
They
Good.
sure do. Yeah, that happened last year. He served as a minor league consultant to the Philadelphia Phillies. And I am officially at least for this season, a Philadelphia Philly fan.
I kind of want to see Dusty Baker get his ring.
No.
Dusty is a Dusty is all-time class
I'm
for baseball.
sorry. No, I don't want them to get it. I want the Philadelphia
Oh,
Phillies.
no, I don't necessarily want the Astros to get it. I want Dusty Baker to get it.
But one does not precede the other.
Right, but it's I have no.
I should
no
say
love for
preclude.
I have no love for the Astros, although they're a great team. But
no,
I really want to see Dusty Baker.
I don't want Altuve anywhere near that.
Altuve is unbelievable. But go back to Sutter for a minute, which started to break flow, but he is kind of the topic of today's future.
Yeah, absolutely. But
one of the things that makes wait.
But I was just sort of making a point that he was a minor league consultant for the Philadelphia Phillies, which links that era to now because the Phillies are going for the title.
Okay, and you don't like Altuve. Yeah. When he did go into the Hall of Fame, which took 13 years on the ballot, in part because of his relatively short career, in part because there was no history of relief pitchers.
Exactly.
But given the fact that his uniform was 42, when he was the only major league player inducted when he went in, but he went in with 17 Negro Leaguers. He went into the Hall of Fame, which is kind of appropriate given the link to Robinson that we just talked about.
Exactly.
Anything else about? Oh, I didn't see this. You'll like this. Oh no, never mind. It's his son was drafted by the Yankees in the 23rd round, but that was back in 1999, and he's now a college coach.
Right.
So you're not going to see any young suitors on the Yankees, at least.
No, not anytime soon. So, in staying within our sports segment, we go over to the Olympics, and Jim Redmond, who was a champion sprinter from England and actually favored to win a medal at the 1992 Games in Barcelona. He ran the fastest time in his 400-meter qualifying round and won the quarterfinal race in Barcelona. It says there were 65,000 people watching, including his father. He then took his place in the fifth lane for the semifinals at Olympic Stadium. Got off to a great start with the 250 meters to go and 3 runners ahead of him. Started to make a move and then crumbled to the ground in pain. He pulled a hammy.
Actually, you're describing Derek Redmond was the runner. Jim is his father.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. But we'll get to where we're going with Jim. He pulled a hamstring. So he was determined to finish the race. And he stood up, began to hobble forward, intent on completing the race. And he couldn't. And his father got up out of the stands, went over to his son. He said, "You don't have to do this." And he said, I want to finish this. And he draped his son's arm around him and they hobbled toward the finish line together. A film crew caught sight of this. And entering the track, he was wearing a Nike cap, blue shorts, and a white T-shirt that read, "Have you hugged your foot today?" I think that's funny.
Did you watch the tape? Did you go back and watch any of it?
I meant to, and I tagged it, but I forgot to go back to it. By the time they reached the finish line, the crowd was roaring. Cameras, crews were surrounding them. An intimate moment between a father and a son had become instant Olympic history.
Derek ran after he got hurt. After he got back up, he ran by himself for a good 5 or 10 seconds.
At number 28, an Olympic image that if you watched it at the time, Barcelona 1992, will live with you forever.
Derek Redmond, the best form he's shown since he broke the British record. The Cleveland Landis has got Redmond to aim at, and so too in lane number 3 is Steve Lewis, but Redmond's got off very fast indeed, and so too is Ismail of Qatar. Down the back straight, he's the fractional leader. Bada of Nigeria has gone very quickly, and Redmond has broken down. He's on the track, kneeling down, and Derek Redmond, on his injury problem, the jinx has struck again.
Well, whatever happens, he had to finish, and I was there to help him finish. I intended to go over the line with him. We started his career together. I think we should finish it together.
Clearly hobbling.
Yeah.
And even though all the other runners had finished, he was committed to finishing the race. He refused other assistance. His father came, as you described, and even then they refused other assistance.
Well, they didn't let it. Yeah, I mean, the father had trouble getting to his son. Like,
oh, he was way up in the stands when it happened. It's not like
his father. Yeah, they didn't want to let him on the track, but he said, "That's my son," and he made his way onto the track, and then that's where the camera crew caught him. Yeah. He was. Yeah. So that was quite stirring.
It was a touching moment. It was almost a little bit. It had a little bit of the Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's record moment to it, in that the Olympics had been suffering bad press between going back to the 80s boycott, and then the Russians boycotting us in 84, and steroid scandals in, I think, 88. So the Olympics weren't quite enjoying the rosy glow that they might have in previous decades. And this was a true feel-good moment that the games definitely needed.
Absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out.
So we have Jim Redmond, who, as I said, he's probably someone whose name people wouldn't know, but many people would likely remember the moments he's famous for, even if they didn't know his name. So he's the closest to somebody who should have been more famous, but wasn't.
Right.
Maybe it's the moment that should have been famous and was. Anything else on
No.
Jim Redmond?
No, just a nice, good fuzzy moment. We move on to James McDivitt, 93. I'll be honest with you, he is not a name that I knew. He was the commander of the Gemini 4. He went on 9 Apollo missions. Was selected to join NASA.
He didn't go on 9. I think he was.
He was part of
Apollo 9.
He was part of
the Apollo 9 flight.
Okay. He was selected to join NASA's second astronaut class in 1962. In 1965, the Gemini 4 mission was his first mission as commander, marked the first time an American astronaut Ed White ventured outside the spacecraft in what eventually became known as a spacewalk. So is he the guy, so instead of being the astronaut, is he the guy that they're reporting to?
He was the astronaut. He was the commander of that flight.
That's what I thought.
He was in the capsule. He was, as opposed to, was it Apollo 11 where Neil Armstrong walked on the moon? He was considered a favorite for that flight.
Correct.
Because he had operated the LEM, the lunar module, in its first test flight and done the docking and all of that. But he opted instead, there he was the lead guy on the ground.
Right.
So he was not on that flight, but he was the lead guy on the ground. But with the lunar walk, he was on the flight. He was the commander of that flight.
Says NASA said that 4-day mission broke the previous American record of 34 hours spent in space during the Mercury 9 mission. He was joined by Command Module Pilot David Scott and Lunar Module Pilot Russell Schweickart. I didn't know there was a difference between modules, so that was interesting.
What do you mean?
So, because it says like there was a pilot to the command module, right? And then there's a pilot for the lunar module. So is that different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lunar module was LEM, was the landing, was the little 4-wheel buggy that landed on the moon. That was
right.
No, not the. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of something else. The lunar module left the spaceship, left the Apollo,
correct,
and landed on the moon, and then flew back from the moon, reunited with the lunar with the
I didn't know there was
I
didn't know that was two different commanders, though. I thought it was all one guy.
You had two guys go to the moon in the lunar module, and one guy stay in the Apollo module.
Got it. I really never really stopped to think about the specifics of that. You know, you just sort of get wrapped up in the guy that's like landed, and you don't really think about the guy that got left behind. But he played a crucial role in eventually helping land the first humans on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission, which you mentioned. His work on Gemini 4 helped extend astronauts' time in space, nearly doubling the duration at that point in early space history. In total, he logged more than 14 days in space before retiring from NASA in 1972.
What I found fascinating in revisiting it was how close together a lot of those flights were.
Yeah. It was the beginning of everything. Yeah, it was the beginning of everything. So every time you turned around, there was something going on.
And how unplanned some of them were. In other words, I had always thought everything was planned down to the nth degree, but they weren't sure whether they were going to do lunar walks at some points. They weren't sure who was going to be the one doing the walk. If they did, they weren't sure if they were going to do this or that, you know, docking with other equipment. Matter of fact, one of the first docking experiences was with part of a capsule that had been left, that was still in orbit, or part of, you know, one of the spaceship's rockets that had been left in orbit after the capsule separated from it. And they were meeting it in space from a later flight and attempting to dock with it. And they failed because it was using up its fuel or something, which made it
sort of remember that. We got to watch a lot of that. I mean, you know, Channel 2. I kind of, as you talk about it, I sort of remember that. It was a whole big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, it was must-see TV.
Absolutely.
I just remember how slow those rockets seemed to be going as they launched. You know, and you could see it passing the camera off the launch pad, and you could read the signage on the side. It seemed to be going so slow, but obviously it was
Mm-hmm.
going very fast even then.
Yeah.
But he was integral in getting us to the moon and everything that followed. And he stayed with NASA for a long time. He stayed with NASA until 72. That the other thing is they didn't really take, after the tragedy in 67, which affected a lot of the people he was training with. They did some redesigns, but didn't take a whole huge break before resuming the moon mission. I mean, they had a major tragedy in 67.
It was
And
still a lot of that was still, a race against the Russians to, do certain things first.
Yeah, and except for landing on the moon, Russia did just about everything else first. They did beat us, obviously, to man in space, first orbit, first extra vehicle mission, first spacewalk. After McDivitt's mission, they went to the space show or the air show in Paris, where they met Yuri Gagarin, the Russian cosmonaut. I thought that was interesting. I didn't think that, although I guess such a small fraternity, but I didn't think there would be much détente between Russian cosmonauts and U.S. astronauts at that stage of the space race. Have you ever met any astronauts?
No.
I met a couple in person.
I did teach in a school named after a female astronaut. She died
Sally
in
Ride?
space. No, the teacher that.
Krista McAuliffe.
Yeah, the school was this. I worked in the school that she had been teaching in, and they renamed the school after her.
Wasn't that in New Hampshire?
No.
I thought Krista McAuliffe taught in New Hampshire. I could be wrong. Although we both know. We both know I never. We both know I almost never.
Oh, listeners, we need to mark the day and time that Mark Silverman said he could be wrong.
We both know I never am. I'm doing it to humor you. Because I'm pretty sure Krista McAuliffe taught in New Hampshire. But I'm going to leave it be. And we shall move on, I think, to Benjamin Civiletti. What did you learn about Benjamin Civiletti in researching for Over the Rainbow?
Well, he was nominated. Let's see. He was an attorney general. He was nominated by President Carter to succeed as attorney general from Richard Thornburg. Now, that's funny because I do recognize the name Richard Thornburg, but I don't recognize Benjamin Civiletti. But he was, excuse me, he was nominated to succeed Richard Thornburg as United States Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division in 1978, and he was nominated to become the Deputy Attorney General. He was serving as the Deputy Attorney General when Griffin Bell resigned as Attorney General of the United States, and he was appointed to the Justice Department top position on July 19, 1979. Is that, in the article that I read, there was a lot about all the different stops that he made on his way to that position. As the U.S. Attorney General, he argued several important cases on behalf of the U.S. government. The one most noted was when he argued before the International Court of Justice on behalf of Americans being held captive in Iran during the Iran-Contra crisis. That's important. That's important. It's good to know.
I know. I think the one that he was involved with that might be more of a lasting impact is he argued and got the commitment that Congress can't function until they agree on a spending bill, which is why without a spending bill, we've had the government shutdowns.
Right.
So,
And, you know, and also he argued before the Supreme Court in support of the government's right to denaturalize Nazi war criminals in Federico versus United States. That hit home with me.
mhm. I wonder, but that's because they're not, it's obviously he was a German immigrant. I
Mhm.
wonder if I don't think you could denaturalize somebody, an American-born citizen. In other words, I don't think you could take citizenship away from somebody who
Well,
was.
if they were, but then they wouldn't have been a Nazi. I mean, this is for Nazi war
Well, I
crimes.
mean,
So, like, if you
we had
became
Americans fight for the Taliban.
right,
So
Mhm.
while if you showed somebody born in Afghanistan, immigrated to the United States, then went back and fought for the Taliban, you
Oh, I
could
see.
argue about denaturalizing and stripping them
Right,
of his citizenship. But
right.
if you had an American, and there have been several who fought for the Taliban,
Mhm.
they could be charged and would be charged with crimes, but you couldn't take away their citizenship.
Right.
So,
He was also the Attorney General that interpreted the United States Constitution and U.S. federal law to say that the government. This is kind of what you were saying.
this is what I was
Um,
just saying, yes.
Yes.
So we don't need to go there again.
Right. Yeah, I was actually visiting a good friend in DC on vacation when the government shut down for 2 days. I was not happy about that. He also was responsible for recommending to President Carter that communications of sentences to time served for 4 unrepentant Puerto Rico nationalists convicted of shooting 5 U.S. congressmen at the U.S. Capitol.
I meant to revisit that story. I knew
Yeah.
of that, but then I saw it was mentioned the assassination. I didn't have a strong memory of any of the victims dying, but they could
None
have.
of that.
I just
None
don't.
of that. Right. I don't have a recall of any of that, but I thought it was important to mention. And it also says on July 10th in 2008, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley announced that Civiletti would serve as the chairman of the Maryland Commission on Capital Punishment, which was set up to study the application of capital punishment in Maryland and make a recommendation on the abolition of
Abolition, yeah.
thank you, of the death penalty in Maryland. That's always a very touchy subject. You know, the death sentence. You know, do you believe in the death sentence, Mark?
I have. I haven't. I've been shifting on it. I've been shifting away from the death penalty to a degree, although I've been a strong proponent.
Right.
Part of my opposition also comes down, or my complaint is, if it's going to be used, it shouldn't take 30 years. You have more people dying of old age on death row than of execution.
Right.
And when it's imposed decades after the crime, it loses its
I
punch.
mean, an eye for an eye kind of thing. But you know what? I had decided that well, here's the thing. So if they don't have the death penalty and the guy has to live, or the girl has to, or the woman has to live a horrible life in prison, that's like almost like a living hell. I think they deserve to have that living hell than to take them out of their misery. You know, it's not killing somebody doesn't bring the person that they took from you back.
Right.
So let them live in hell.
Now, we used to have the other extreme. I mean, I remember, I don't know if it was Sacco and Vanzetti in particular, though it likely could have been, back in the early 1900s, from arrest to conviction to execution, often all took place in less than a year. You know.
Now, the last notation that I have on him, I don't know if I took more because of the date, which happens to be my birthday. On November 12, 2008, the commission voted 13-7 with Mr. Civiletti voting with the majority to recommend that the Maryland General Assembly abolish capital punishment in the state.
Okay.
So, an important reference, but I don't know. I may have included it just because the date
It is your birthday.
registered. Yeah, the date registered with me.
All right. Anything else on Mr. Civiletti?
No, we can move on. Here's somebody whose name sounded familiar to me, but I didn't really know. He was totally a different person than I thought he was. His name is Robbie Coltrane.
Okay,
And he
but
was
now, wait a minute though, because
Mhm.
you mentioned this in when we promoted it last week. He took the
Yeah.
stage name of Coltrane in honor of the jazz musician.
Yes, I thought that it was the jazz saxophonist, but it turned out that he took the name as a homage to Coltrane.
Right.
So, and what you would know him for is not being a saxophonist, but he was a British actor who most people would know as Hagrid from the Harry Potter and movies, enterprises. So I was close, but not quite on the money there. Like I said, I was definitely interested in reading his bio. I wasn't disappointed though. I wondered, some of the names we research, I research because we sort of have to. But his bio, I was actually interested in because you really didn't know who this actor was until he played Hagrid. So I was interested to find out what he had done before. He was a stage actor. He appeared and apparently was somewhat famous in Britain. He appeared in the first stage production of John Burns' The Slab Boys at the Traverse Theatre in Edinburgh in 1978. He actually, and I could see this, he had very comedic skills, which probably is why he was so good as Hagrid, because that's a funny role. And I really didn't appreciate it the first time that I saw him in the role. His comedic skills landed him roles in the comic strip Presents. It was a 1982 series that ran through to 2012. He had other movie credits that I wasn't aware of.
Oh yeah, he had been the Pope in The Pope Must Die. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would imagine that. I remember that movie, and I would imagine the Pope was a pretty key character in The Pope Must Die.
Yeah, and in any of the movies
he was in a couple. He was a villain in a couple of James Bond movies. He played the same part in a couple of James Bond movies. So
he was in Flash Gordon in 1980, Death Wash, which also came out in 1980. He was in a movie called Crow, 1983, Defiance of the Realm in 1985.
Crow was the movie where Bruce Lee's son died.
Yes. Okay. And I like kung fu movies, and I kind of wanted to see it, but then when he died, I was like, nah. So I never did see that one.
Oh, wait a minute.
No,
did you say
that's
Crow?
not right.
Did you say Crow or Crow?
No, it was the Crow that he died, and this was called Crow.
Crow.
K-R-U-L-L.
Yeah. Okay, I misheard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was one of the last movies I saw with my mom. It was very interesting. The Crow. Crow. I saw that movie with my mom. It was a very dark movie. It was not quite the kung fu we're kind of used to his father doing.
Maybe
it was good though.
Maybe it would have been a little lighter if Hagrid was in it.
The whole storyline. It was just a very dark story.
I'm just saying Coltrane might have been some comic relief and lightened it up a little.
Oh, could be. He starred opposite Jeremy Irons in the television film adaptation of Roald Dahl's children's book Danny, the Champion of the World, which is, as an elementary teacher, I wouldn't mind seeing. I haven't seen it, but now that I know it exists, I may go looking for it. He also played a would-be private detective obsessed with Humphrey Bogart in the TV movie The Bogeyman in 1992. You already mentioned the James Bond movies, GoldenEye, and of course he was most famous as the Half Giant in the Harry Potter films. He also, let me see, in August of 2007, he presented a series for something called ITV in Britain called B Road Britain, in which he traveled from London to Glasgow, stopping in towns and villages along the way. But that sounds like the kind of thing that we would do here called On the Road, which is always kind of a fun thing to watch. So I'm sure that was very interesting. He did voice characters too. He did several animated films, including The Tale of Despero. He was in, I didn't know, I watched Brave. I didn't know he was in that. He played in Pixar's Brave 2012, as well as the title role of Gooby and the Gruffo, both in 2009. He was nominated for Best Actor at the 2017 British Academy Television Awards and won in the category of the Royal Television Society Program Awards. So good going, Hagrid.
By the way, in the Puerto Rican attack on Congress, none of the 5 Congress people died. Only one was severely wounded.
Okay.
Others were minor wounds or less severe. Just wanted to tie the knot on that.
Okay.
And it looks like I haven't seen Chris McAuliffe taught in New Hampshire.
I was
Concord,
looking that
New
up.
Hampshire.
They named this school after her, and they told me that she taught there.
She did not teach in. Where did you teach?
Well, I was misinformed, but that school that I taught in is in Brooklyn.
Yeah, she did not teach in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So when I thought I was mistaken, I was mistaken. So technically, I was mistaken.
Oh, there we go.
Because I was actually right, and I said I was mistaken.
Haha.
So that brings us to the Simon sisters. This
Simon
is a
sisters.
weird one.
Carly Simon's sisters, Joanna and Lucy Simon. 3 years apart. Joanna was 85 and Lucy was 82. And I believe that they both died from breast cancer, and it was...
No, Joanna died of thyroid cancer.
Okay, and they died within, was it a day or 3 days?
Yeah, a day of each other.
How horrifying. But I found like the best quote ever from Carly Simon. She said, "As sad as this day is, it's impossible to mourn them without celebrating their incredible lives that they lived." And I can't think of anything that would exemplify what we are trying to do with Over the Rainbow. Well, she's so Carly is also now the sole surviving sister who also lost her brother Peter, who was a photographer who died in 2018.
He was also of cancer. I think he died of lung cancer.
Okay.
At 71 or something like that, if I remember correctly. A couple of things that I thought interesting. I didn't realize that the Simon, their father is Simon of Simon and Schuster.
Right. No, I did know that.
So I've known of Carly Simon since I was a kid.
Oh yeah. I actually, she was in the audience at St. John's when her then husband James Taylor played a concert at our school, and she was sitting in the audience with their first child.
I just didn't realize that she came from a rather prominent family.
That's Simon. Yep, that's Simon. Yeah, I didn't know. I knew about Peter, but I didn't know about the 2 sisters. I didn't realize there were 4 siblings. Well, and yeah, I also didn't know, I mean, this is further down in my notes, but when she first started singing, she wasn't a solo act. She actually sang in a group called the Simon Sisters with her sister, the younger one. The younger one was Lucy Simon.
Yeah, they were a duo.
And it was, she had they'd done a song together that I'm fond of. but I did not know that it first was sung as a duo.
I do
Well,
remember
first of
one of
all,
their first Village appearances was a gay bar, and they had no idea.
A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep, to everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn.
oh,
Might have been a
I've
lesbian
been in,
bar, and they had no
I've
idea.
I've been in that situation where a friend of mine took me to a gay bar and I didn't know until like I got a seat at the bar and it was very dark in there. And she said, I have to go to the ladies' room. I'll be right back. And I ordered a drink. And as I was sitting there, I started to notice there were no men. So I was going to
I was
go.
taken to a lesbian bar, and I cannot remember why and by whom.
So tell us about the gay bar.
I don't remember much about it. I'm just remembering as you were talking about that. I remember somebody took me, had to be late teens, early 20s, and I don't remember much more about it. I don't remember who
At least
took
you
me or
got to
what.
look at at least you got to look at beautiful women. I didn't even, I mean, I wouldn't have minded as much if it was a group of gay guys. At least they're good looking, at least there's something to look
I
at
think
there.
that's very stereotypical.
Could
Well,
be.
I found now you mentioned you liked the quote about the sisters. I found
Yeah.
one of the more interesting factoids in researching this, besides the fact that
Uh-huh.
they come from the Simon and Schuster. They
Yeah.
mentioned Joanna, the opera singer, the older sister, was
Yes,
married to novelist and journalist Gerald Walker
that's right.
for almost 30 years. He died in
Mm-hmm.
2004. And then almost
Mm-hmm.
as a throwaway line is the sentence, she was also the companion to journalist Walter Cronkite from
I know. You know
2005
what?
till he died in
I almost
2009.
I almost put that in there and I thought, no, he'll kill me because I thought you would think of it as a notation that it was something that had nothing to do with their
I think,
stories.
first of all,
I'm
Walter
glad you brought it
Cronkite
up.
comes up in almost all our shows.
Yeah.
And that's a benchmark. And the fact that it was her companion,
Yeah.
that phrasing, I just found fascinating.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Especially since we called him Uncle Walter in our house. But Joanna, so like I had actually looked at this and I kind of separated the bios. Joanna, the eldest sister, has a much longer bio than Lucy did. She was a mezzo soprano, and not only was she married to a journalist, but it says that she was a journalist. She was an internationally famous opera singer. She made her debut in 1962 at the New York City Opera as Mozart's Cherubino. Is that how you say that?
I don't know.
And won the regional division of the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions and the Marian Anderson Award. She was the first singer to record the role of Irene in Handel's I'll say it, Tamerlano. Do this, singing the part of the opera's first recording in 1970. So that's pretty significant. She made recordings with several orchestras during her career, including the New York Philharmonic, the Vienna Philharmonic.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Birds fly over
And I didn't even know Pittsburgh had a symphony, but she sang with them too.
I think almost every city of size has a symphony.
Could be. She was a singer in the recording of Carly's song "Turn of the Tide." I know that song, but I did not know that it was commissioned by the Democratic Party for use in a political campaign. And she also performed as a backup singer on the album made by both of her sisters. How about that?
There you go.
She appeared as a feature performer on the very last episode of the Ed Sullivan Show in March of 1971. Now I watched What's My Line, so I'm surprised that I didn't know she was a panelist on What's My Line in 1968. So maybe just because, we were 8, I didn't remember, but
yeah.
She made appearances on programs hosted by Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Dick Cavett, and David Frost. The only one that I really remember watching was Mike Douglas, although I had seen a couple Merv Griffin, but the other two I just know about, never watched. She was nominated for a Tony Award for the score of the Secret Garden musical, and she retired professionally in 1986. She won an Emmy Award for her work as the arts correspondent for PBS McNeil Lather NewsHour from 1986 to 1992. And then I went and I looked at Lucy, but do you have anything to add concerning?
No, I just can't get the image of her and Walter Cronkite out of my head.
I love that. And I almost put it down like, no, Mark will kill me. So I edited myself on that and you put it in. Thank you. So, so then I went and I looked up Lucy, and Lucy's biography is not quite as long. She was a composer for the theater, and it says of popular songs, but it didn't really list like those songs. She also performed as a singer and songwriter and was known for the musicals The Secret Garden and Dr. Zhivago. I saw both of those movies, and I had no idea that she had anything to do with either of those movies. I already mentioned at the beginning of this segment that she was part of this sister duo, Simon Sisters. They released 3 albums, beginning with Meet the Simon Sisters. Now I have to go look for that. Here it is. Which featured the song Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod. I love that song, but I did not know Lucy had anything to do with it. And the song became a minor hit on the Billboard Hot 100 by reaching number 73. And as a former DJ, that's an important notation.
And she did win Grammys and had Tony nominations.
Yeah, I just had gotten to that. She won a Grammy Award in 1981. Did you know that she had recorded with her husband David Levine in the Best Recording for Children category for In Harmony? And she received the Tony Award and a Drama Desk Award nomination for composing the music for the Broadway musical The Secret Garden. I was not interested in seeing the Broadway play. Favorite book of my sister's. I went to see the movie with her and my best friend. They loved it. I was like, but I do remember that Broadway show being out and winning many awards. So now I know why. I know why. Very famous Simon Sisters had a lot to do with that.
And they were modest. They weren't vain at all.
Yeah, no, only the men in her life you're so vain. Yeah. My first boyfriend, that song was written about him because he thought he was Brooklyn's answer to Romeo.
Okay. Which brings us to Eclipse the dog. Perfect segue.
Yeah, let me just make a quick notation. So you know how when you're first car dating, right? You go to Lover's Lane, whatever. But we were in the parking lot at Marine Park, and the song comes on. We're sitting in the front seat, and he looks over at me. He says, "That song was written about me." I was like, okay. Anyway, I have a penchant for finding a fuzzy, warm stories about dogs and animals. And this week I had found an article about Eclipse, and he was a famous dog for, get this, for riding solo on bus trips.
Yeah, where would he go? Was it the park? Is that what it
Could you
said?
imagine? Yeah, he went to a dog park. So in 2015, he became a local celebrity when she was spotted taking the bus by herself to a nearby dog park. She learned how to ride the D line on previous trips with her owner, Jeff Young. Her first trip started when I could see Curly, or one of your dogs, doing this. She was getting impatient. She wanted to go to the dog park, and he was detained. He was taking too long for her.
I think he
So
said he was
she,
smoking a cigarette.
yeah, he was finishing a cigarette, says, by his Queen Anne apartment. So she hopped aboard the bus before her owner could join her. He did follow her though. Now get this. She was a black Labrador Mastiff mix. This is not a small animal.
No.
And she traveled all the way to Belttown with her owner right following close behind her. After that, she made numerous trips to the park on her own, and local bus drivers even started to recognize her and let her come aboard.
As opposed to, they would recognize her specifically, as opposed to the other dogs that were riding the bus by
Exactly.
themselves.
Exactly. And the thing is that they even got her own bus pass that was attached to her collar. And then it got to a point where, like, the passengers on that bus line started looking for her. So when her owner showed up on occasion without Eclipse, they would say, "Hi, where's Eclipse?" They were like missing the dog. So it says she was a super sweet dog and became a Seattle icon. She brought joy and happiness to everyone and showed us all that good dogs belong on the bus.
I don't know that. Well, okay. Curly, to an extent, when we leave the house, if it's later at night, and not a lot of people around the complex, I'll let them run out of the apartment off leash.
Mhm.
Especially if I'm just going to my parking space, which is down a little flight of steps to get something
Mhm.
from the car. And she'll go left.
Good
She'll veer
timing,
left.
Carly. Good
Yeah.
timing, Curly. Yes.
She'll veer left, and I'll say, "No, we're going to the car." And she'll look and she'll run down the stairs, and she'll get to the top of the stairs. She'll go down a few, then she'll come back up, make sure I'm following. Then she'll go down, then she'll go to the car. She'll stand up, look in the passenger side. Then she'll run around the car, look in the driver's side. Then she'll come back and make sure I'm on the stairs. So she'll do that. The other day we came out and we went to the main part of the parking lot. We went left because I was meeting my wife, which she didn't know. Yet as soon as she saw my wife's car, she went running to it. But Sparkle, my dog before, she had directions. I think I might have told you. We moved and she told my wife, Redora, when she was going down the wrong street. She was excited to be getting close to home. Then she realized we weren't getting close to home, as Redora would tell it. And she looked at her and went, "Huh?" That's when Redora realized she was one block over. We had just moved to this house about 2 weeks earlier.
That's funny.
And she made a right turn a block early. And Sparkle basically told her. So I get that they can have a good.
Yeah, when I was still living in Brooklyn, when I was living in Borough Park, she would take Alex. It's Jimmy now, but she would take Alex with her to pick me up, and she would tell Alex, "We're going to Aunt Sharon's house," and he'd get all excited, and he would just like look out the window, and then like when she was like a block from my house, ready to make the turn, he got all excited, started popping into the front seat, and he knew my block. So they're smart. Some of them are very, very smart. So thank you to the Sweet Eclipse, and for all the animals that we that makes our lives more worthy. And it again, it shows, you should show your love for those you care for today, because they may not be here tomorrow, or you might not be here tomorrow.
No,
Will
but
you
I'll
be
be
here
here
tomorrow, Mark?
Day after tomorrow.
Okay. Do you have anybody to promo for us for next time?
Well, this one surprised me in that the amount of attention it's getting. Leslie Jordan, who is the short, openly gay actor, plays a Southern guy on a bunch of things. He was on, and
yeah, he was on Will. He was on Will and Grace,
Will and
and now
Grace.
he's on. Yeah, now he's most notably on Malik. What's Mayim Malik? Something about a cat. It's on ABC. I watched it a couple times, and I mean, I am a Mayim fan, but it's quirky, but it just really didn't have it for me. So I didn't even know it was still on the air.
Yeah, it's just starting up again. It's cute.
Yeah, so
it's got some moments.
Yeah, so I've been seeing a lot of stuff about him and on Facebook, and people are really upset with his
I wouldn't have expected
crossing over
to get the kind of attention it's getting. So he will be featured next week, and we have several other things. 14 years old, he looked like 65 when he died.